You told yourself you'd go to the gym today, but it's raining, and the bed is warm, and you're tired from yesterday, so you skip it. Just this once. You'll go tomorrow, you promise. But tomorrow comes, and something else gets in the way. A meeting runs late, or you're not feeling it, or life just happens. And suddenly, one missed day becomes two becomes a week, and by the end of the month, the routine you built is gone. The momentum you had vanished, and you're back at square one, wondering how it fell apart so quickly. Here's what most people don't understand. Momentum isn't something you have, it's something you maintain, and it's far more fragile than you think. One day doesn't seem like much. It feels like nothing, like a drop in the ocean. But that one day, it's everything. Because it's not about the workout you missed. It's about the promise you broke. It's about the signal you sent to your brain that your word is negotiable, that your commitments are conditional, that when discomfort arrives, you're allowed to quit. And once that door opens, even just a crack, it becomes easier to walk through it again, and again, and again. Until consistency isn't who you are anymore. It's who you used to be. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that character isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the small, daily choices that no one sees. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Such as are your habitual thoughts, such also will be the character of your mind." And your habits? They're formed one day at a time, one choice at a time. One moment when you either honor your word or you don't. This is the principle of consistency, and it's brutal, unforgiving, and absolutely necessary. Because if you can't stay consistent, you can't build anything that lasts. Not strength, not success, not self-respect. You'll always be starting over, always be getting back to it, always be one day away from the life you keep saying you want, but never actually building. So today, we're going to talk about why missing one day matters more than you think, and how to become the kind of man who doesn't miss. The hidden cost. What really happens when you skip? Most men think missing one day is harmless. They do the math in their heads. I worked out 6 days this week. What's one day off? I've been eating clean for 2 weeks. One cheat day won't hurt. I've been focused for a month. I deserve a break. And on the surface, that logic sounds reasonable. But here's what they're missing. Consistency isn't about the physical result. It's about the mental pattern. When you skip once, you're not just missing a workout. You're training your brain that commitments are flexible. You're teaching yourself that discomfort is a valid reason to quit. You're proving that your word to yourself doesn't really mean anything. And your brain? It's always watching. It's collecting data about who you are, about what you actually do when no one's forcing you. And when you skip, it files that information away. Oh, so we're the kind of person who quits when things are inconvenient. We're the kind of person who negotiates with ourselves. We're the kind of person who breaks promises when we don't feel like keeping them. And the next time you're faced with a choice, to do the hard thing or take the easy path, your brain already has evidence about what you'll probably choose. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But if you're constantly saying one thing and doing another, if there's a gap between who you claim to be and what you actually do, then you're living in dissonance. And that dissonance? It destroys confidence. Because deep down, you know you're not serious. You know you're lying to yourself. You know that when the test comes, you'll probably fold. And that knowing, that quiet voice that reminds you of every time you quit, it robs you of the self-trust you need to attempt anything difficult. Because why would you trust yourself? You've proven over and over that you can't be trusted. Carl Jung said, You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. And what you do on the days you don't feel like it, that's who you really are. Not the version of you that's motivated, not the version that's inspired, the version that's tired, uncomfortable, uninspired, and still shows up anyway. That's the real test. And most men fail it, not because they're weak, but because they don't understand that missing one day isn't about that day. It's about the pattern it creates. The momentum myth. Why it's harder to restart than to continue. Here's something most people learn too late. Stopping is easy. Starting again is brutal. When you have momentum, everything flows. The workout feels natural. The routine feels automatic. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. But the moment you stop, even for a day, that automaticity disappears. Suddenly, you have to convince yourself all over again. You have to rebuild the habit from scratch. You have to overcome inertia, which is far harder than maintaining motion. Newton's first law applies to more than just physics. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an external force. And in your life, that external force is usually you. You're the one who stops yourself. You're the one who breaks the chain. And then you wonder why it's so hard to get back into it. It's because you're not just resuming, you're restarting. And starting requires more energy than continuing ever does. Think about it. When you're in a groove, going to the gym is easy. You don't debate it, you just go. But after a week off, suddenly it's a negotiation. Do I really need to go today? Maybe I should ease back into it. I'll start fresh on Monday. And the longer you're off, the harder it gets. Because now you're not just fighting resistance, you're fighting the shame of having stopped, the disappointment of having broken your streak, the fear that you won't be able to get back to where you were. Seneca wrote, "Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life." And that wisdom applies here. Because every day you maintain consistency, you're living as the person you want to be. But every day you skip, you're living as the person you're trying to leave behind. And the transition between those two people? It's not smooth. It's jarring, uncomfortable, filled with resistance. That's why winners protect their momentum like it's sacred, because they know something most people don't. It's always easier to keep going than to stop and restart. So they don't stop. They adjust, they modify, they scale back if they need to, but they don't break the chain. Because they understand that the chain itself, the unbroken sequence of showing up, that's the real asset. Not the individual workouts or tasks. The pattern, the identity, the proof that there's someone who doesn't quit. The real enemy, the just this once trap. Let's talk about the most dangerous phrase in the English language. Just this once. It sounds innocent, harmless even. I'll skip just this once. I'll indulge just this once. I'll break the rule just this once. But here's the trap. There's no such thing as just this once. Every exception becomes a precedent. Every time you bend the rule, you're making it easier to bend it again. And what starts as a one-time thing becomes a pattern. Before you know it, just this once has happened 6 times this month. And the standard you set for yourself? It's eroded. You've gone from someone who doesn't miss to someone who misses regularly and makes excuses about it. The Stoics warned against this kind of thinking. They understood that discipline isn't about making the right choice most of the time. It's about making the right choice every time. Because the moment you create exceptions, you're no longer operating from principle. You're operating from convenience. And convenience will always find a reason to quit. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." What he meant was this: the obstacle isn't the problem, your relationship with the obstacle is. And when you allow just this once to become your default response to difficulty, You're training yourself to see obstacles as stop signs instead of seeing them as opportunities to prove your commitment. Think about the men you admire, the ones who've built something real, something lasting. Do you think they operated on just this once? Do you think they skipped when it was inconvenient? Do you think they negotiated with themselves every time they didn't feel like showing up? No, they showed up, period. Not because they always wanted to, but because they understood that their character was on the line, and they weren't willing to compromise it for comfort. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And habits don't have exceptions. They don't take days off. They don't operate on feelings. They just are. And if you want to become excellent at anything, you have to eliminate just this once from your vocabulary. Because that phrase, it's a trap door, and every time you use it, you fall a little further from who you said you'd be. The identity shift, from trying to being. Here's where this gets deeper. Most people think consistency is about doing, but it's actually about being. When you show up every single day, when you refuse to break the chain, when you honor your word, even when no one's watching, you're not just building a habit, you're building an identity. You're becoming someone who doesn't miss. And that identity, it changes everything. Because once you see yourself as someone who shows up, skipping stops being an option. It's not that you don't feel resistance anymore. It's that the resistance doesn't matter, because this is who you are. You're not someone who's trying to be consistent. You're someone who is consistent, and that distinction is everything. Epictetus taught, if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be a philosopher, philosophize. He understood that identity comes from action, not the other way around. You don't become disciplined and then start showing up. You show up, repeatedly, and become disciplined through the process. But most people are waiting to feel like the kind of person who doesn't miss, waiting to feel motivated enough to stay consistent, waiting for some internal shift that makes it easier. But that shift never comes first. The shift happens because of the consistency, not before it. So if you want to become someone who's unbreakable, someone who doesn't fold when things get hard, someone whose word actually means something, you have to show up. Today, tomorrow, the day after. On the days you want to, and the days you don't. On the good days and the terrible ones. Until showing up is just what you do. Until it's not a decision anymore. It's who you are. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And right now, if you're inconsistent, it's because you haven't decided who you are. You're letting your feelings decide for you. You're letting your circumstances dictate your actions. You're letting your mood determine your destiny. But when you decide, truly decide, that you're someone who doesn't miss, everything changes. Because now you're not operating from willpower, you're operating from identity. And identity is far more powerful than motivation could ever be. The compound effect, why every day matters. Let's talk numbers for a second, because this isn't just philosophy, it's mathematics. Imagine two people. Both start at the same place. Both have the same goal. But person A shows up every single day. Person B shows up most days, but misses here and there. At the end of 1 week, the difference is barely noticeable. Maybe person A is slightly ahead, but not by much. But at the end of 1 month, person A has built momentum, consistency, confidence. Person B is still starting and stopping, still fighting resistance. At the end of 1 year, person A is unrecognizable, transformed. Person B is maybe 20% better, still struggling with the same patterns. That's the compound effect. And it's not linear, it's exponential. James Clear, in his research on habits, found that if you get 1% better every day, you'll be 37 times better in a year. But if you get 1% worse every day, you'll decline to nearly zero. And here's the thing. Missing a day isn't staying the same. It's getting worse. Because you're not just losing progress, you're losing momentum. You're reinforcing the pattern of inconsistency. You're training yourself to quit. And all of that compounds too, just in the wrong direction. Seneca warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And most of that waste happens in the gaps, in the days you skipped, in the weeks you told yourself you'd start again on Monday, in the months you spent talking about what you'd do instead of doing it. But here's the beautiful thing. You can start compounding in the right direction today. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not next month. Today. And every day you show up after that, you're adding to the compound. You're building momentum. You're becoming someone different, someone stronger, more capable, more trustworthy. And a year from now, you won't believe how far you've come. But only if you don't miss. Only if you protect the chain. Only if you understand that every single day matters. Because it does. More than you think. The practical defense. How to protect your streak. So how do you actually do this? How do you become someone who doesn't miss? It starts with understanding that consistency isn't about perfection, it's about presence. You don't have to have the perfect workout every day. You don't have to do the full routine every time. You just have to show up, even if it's a scaled-back version, even if it's the bare minimum, even if all you do is show up and prove to yourself that you didn't break the chain. Here's the framework. 1. Define your non-negotiable minimum. What's the absolute smallest thing you can do that still counts? For working out, maybe it's 10 push-ups. For writing, maybe it's 1 paragraph. For meditation, maybe it's 2 minutes. This isn't your standard, it's your floor. The thing you do on your worst days. Because the goal isn't to always perform at 100%. The goal is to never hit 0. 2. Plan for obstacles. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. You know life is going to throw things at you. You know there will be days when you're tired, sick, busy, unmotivated. So plan for them. Decide in advance what you'll do when those situations arise. Not if, when. Because if you wait until you're in the moment to decide, you'll choose comfort every time. But if you've already decided, you just execute. No negotiation, no debate, just action. 3. Track your progress visibly. There's something powerful about seeing an unbroken chain. Get a calendar, get an app, get a notebook. Mark off every day you show up and watch the chain grow. Because every day you add is proof. Proof that you're serious. Proof that you're different. Proof that you're becoming someone who doesn't quit. And when you're tempted to skip, look at that chain. Look at all those consecutive days and ask yourself, am I really going to break this for one moment of comfort? Jerry Seinfeld famously used this technique to write jokes every day. He called it, "Don't break the chain." And it works because it makes the abstract concrete. It makes consistency visible. And once you can see it, you can protect it. 4. Remove the decision. The more you have to think about whether you'll do something, the more likely you are to talk yourself out of it. So remove the decision entirely. Make it automatic. Same time, same place, same routine. No debates, no negotiations. It just happens. Because it's what you do. Aristotle said, We are what we repeatedly do, and repetition becomes easier when it's automatic, when you don't have to use willpower, because it's just part of your schedule. Like brushing your teeth, you don't debate whether you'll do it, you just do it. That's what you're aiming for. The breaking point. What to do when you actually miss. Let's be real. You're human. At some point, you might actually miss a day. Maybe you're legitimately sick. Maybe there's a genuine emergency. Maybe life just overwhelms you. So what do? Don't miss twice. That's the rule. One missed day is a mistake. 2 missed days is the beginning of a new pattern, and you cannot let that pattern start. So if you miss Monday, you show up on Tuesday, no matter what. No excuses, no negotiations. You show up. Because the second day is where everything is decided. That's where you prove whether you're serious, whether you're just someone who talks about discipline or someone who actually lives it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And missing one day, that's an obstacle. But it's also an opportunity to show yourself that you don't fold, that you don't spiral, that one mistake doesn't become a month of them, because you're someone who recovers, someone who gets back up, someone who doesn't let a single missed day turn into a lost year. That's resilience. That's strength. Not never falling, but always getting back up, and getting back up faster each time. The long game. Why this matters more than you think. Here's what this is really about. It's not about the gym or the diet or the morning routine. Those are just the training ground. This is about whether you can trust yourself. Because if you can't keep small promises to yourself, how will you keep big ones? If you can't stay consistent with a workout routine, how will you stay consistent in your career, in your relationships, in the pursuit of your actual dreams? You won't. Because consistency is a skill, and like any skill, it transfers. When you build it in one area, it strengthens every other area. When you become someone who doesn't miss workouts, you become someone who doesn't miss deadlines, who doesn't miss important moments with family, who doesn't miss opportunities when they arise, because you've trained yourself to show up, no matter what. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And consistency is the friction. It's the trial. It's the thing that polishes you into someone worth becoming. But only if you embrace it. Only if you protect it. Only if you understand that missing one day isn't just about that day. It's about the trajectory of your entire life. Closing. The man who never misses. So let's bring this home. The principle of consistency is simple. Miss one day, lose momentum. Not just physical momentum, but mental, emotional, spiritual momentum. Because every day you show up, you're building something. You're proving to yourself that you're serious, that your word means something, that you're not like everyone else who talks, but doesn't do. And every day you miss, you're tearing that down. You're going backwards. You're training yourself to be someone who quits. So the question is, which person are you going to be? The person who shows up every single day, who protects their momentum like it's sacred, who understands that one day matters more than they can imagine, or the person who skips when it's inconvenient, who breaks promises to themselves, who's always starting over because they never learned to stay. The choice is yours, and you make it every single day. Not once in some grand moment of decision, but in 1,000 small moments, when you're tired, when you're busy, when you don't feel like it. Those are the moments that define you. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." And consistency? It's not created suddenly either. It's built, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment when you either honor your word or you don't. So tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off and your mind starts making deals, remember this. You're not just deciding whether to work out. You're deciding whether you're someone who can be trusted, whether you're someone who finishes what they start, whether you're someone who's building something real or just someone who talks about it. And that decision, that small, seemingly insignificant decision, it compounds, day after day, week after week, year after year, until one day you look up and you've become someone you didn't think was possible. Not because you had some dramatic transformation, but because you showed up every single day, even when you didn't want to, especially when you didn't want to. That's the principle of consistency. That's the difference between winners and everyone else. And it's available to you right now, starting today. So don't miss, because one day matters more than you think. Marcus Aurelius left us with this: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. And being one starts with showing up, today, tomorrow, the day after, until showing up isn't something you do, it's who you are. Stay focused, stay grounded, and whatever you do, don't break the chain.